In this video, I want to talk about the game Pax Pamir or Pax Pamir, released by Sierra Madre Games and designed by Cole, I hope I'm not butchering her name, Worley and Phil Eklund. This game is based on another game by Sierra Madre Games called Pax Pamir, and I'm going to hopefully explain this video and go over the rules and overview of the game in such a way that you will understand without knowing anything about Pax Pamir, but I will come back and compare the two games occasionally whenever there are things I feel are very different between the two. And spoiler, I think the games are very different. Pax Pamir is totally its own animal and a very good game. When you actually play it, it feels like a completely different experience. So the first thing to do is to go over the components of the game. You get some disc. These are the money that you use in the game. You get little wooden cubes in the 5 different player colors. These represent your own pieces throughout the game as you put them down. And you get another set of wooden components, and these represent the 3 empires that are present in the game. Green is Afghanistan, red is Britain, and blue is Russia. And this would probably be a good point to explain what Pax Pamir is about. It describes a period in history that is sometimes called the Great Game, and is about sort of the mid-19th century and takes place in what is now Afghanistan, roughly, give or take, so the surrounding areas as well. And this is basically a sort of Cold War struggle between superpowers, the superpowers at the time, British Empire and the Russian Empire. And they are struggling for control of this area and sending spies, and sometimes the war turns hot and they're sending soldiers in as well. So these wooden components represent the 3 empires in the game. And I think a fair comparison would be that the empires are a bit like companies in games that use stock. So no player owns or fully controls one of the empires. The different players each can have influence in the same empire or in different empires. And if your empire does well, you do well. But you can change your loyalty as well and become loyal to a different empire if you want to. On several points throughout the game, you will check if any of the 3 empires has supremacy. And when that's the case, the player with the most influence in that empire wins the game. So these are very closely tied to the victory condition, and I'll talk more about the victory condition later. So talking about the player, you get a number of these cards. These represent you. You are a tribal leader in Afghanistan, and you want to position your tribe in such a way that you, whenever one empire reigns supreme, you're in the best position to take advantage of that. The player cards, unlike in Pax Pamir, have no special ability. They're all identical, and they have a very nice sort of ruled summary. The only functional part about these cards are these little spaces here where you can place cubes. I'll get to that later in the game. Every player starts with one of these and with a starting loyalty. So let me just... You're being dealt one of these cards at random, and you choose a facing. And this determines your starting loyalty, and you put it under your card like such. So if this was your card, you would either be loyal to Russia or loyal to Afghanistan. There's also a number on the card, and these numbers determine the order in which the players will take their turns. I've only played the game once, and I've played it one more time by myself just to kind of learn the rules. At this point, I don't think it matters if you're first or last. It doesn't seem to have a big impact on the game. The other cards that are important are these cards. They describe the regime. So the game is going to be in a certain regime, in a certain state. And during the game, this can change. If you play a certain card, then this may change the regime you're in. And these regime cards have an effect on play, based on these icons that you see here. And they also have a very big impact on the victory conditions, which I explain in detail later. The meat and potato of the game are these cards, which don't really have a name in the rules, but I'm just going to call them play cards. And you get a bunch of these. You get like, I think, 90-ish cards. You're only going to use a fraction of them in any given game. So this adds high replayability. And I will go over these cards in much more detail later on. You build a stack out of these play cards and you seed it with 4 topple cards. Whenever one of these topple cards is triggered in the game, this is when you check if any of the empires has supremacy and if any of the players has now won the game. So these are also important. The game also comes with a map. Now in Pax Pamir, the map is made up of cards like such. And you're going to place your playing pieces either on the cards or in between the cards. So first of all, you get 6 cards. I'm only showing 4 here. And these work pretty well. I was afraid that this would be a bit flimsy or not so practical, but this works fine. It's perfectly serviceable, and it keeps the game in this tiny, tiny box that it comes with, which I really appreciate. You can go to the publisher's webpage and buy a mounted map that looks like this. And this is it's much bigger, it's sturdier, it has extra information. There's a rule summary down here and on the side, which you can't see. And it's really, really nice looking, but it's optional. You're perfectly fine with these cards. They work just as well. There's a big difference though. In Pax Pamir, you have this map, and the map has a huge impact on gameplay. There's a real spatial element to this. In Pax Porfiriana, there was no real map to speak of. There was some kind of element, but it wasn't nearly as important as it is here in this game. So let's talk about these cards, these play cards. And or maybe first talk about the actions you take in a game and how you acquire these cards, how you play these cards. So on your turn you get 2 actions, and there are 3 basic actions that you can always take. It's purchase, which means put a card from the offer, from the market, into your hand, and play that card from your hand into your tableau, or discard the card from your hand just into the discard pile. So what is this market I'm talking about? When you set up the game, you will set it up like such. You have the map down here, your draw deck, and you make 2 rows of cards like this. And this will look pretty familiar if you've played Pax Porfiriana before, because it features this market as well. If I want to take this first action and take a card into my hand, I'll pick one of these, maybe say this one, and just put it in my hand. But I need to pay a certain amount of money. The coins, or the money I put on the cards, I'm going to put one coin on every card I skip, and then I take this one, and they will remain on these cards. Someone else later picks up this card, for example, or this one, they would get this coin. And this already is a huge difference between Pax Porfiriana and Pax Pamir, because here, if I want to pick up a card, I leave the money on the cards in the market. In Pax Porfiriana, I would pay to the bank most of the time, and the cards that I have in my tableau would produce money, which I get from the bank. There'll be constantly money going into the bank and coming out of the bank. In Pax Pamir, the money more or less stays the same throughout the whole game. Every player starts with 4 coins, and that total amount almost never changes. And the money is just being redistributed from one player to another player, rather than entering and leaving play. Okay, so now I've taken a card from the market and put it into my hand. This is one of the actions I can do. What can I do with the cards in my hand? Well, one of the things I can do is I can just discard it from my hand. That does not sound very exciting, but it is something you sometimes want to do because in this game you have a hand limit. And at the start of the game, that limit is 1. You can only have 1 card in your hand. It's very restrictive and very, very different from Pax Porfiriana. So if I already have cards in my hand that match or exceed my limit, I can no longer draw a card into my hand. So maybe that's the reason why I want to discard it, just to get rid of it. Also, I prevent the card from being played, because you're wondering like, hey, maybe just play the card, but maybe it would cost me money to play the card and I don't have that money. Or I don't want to play the card because I know my opponent would steal it, which people can do in this game. If you use both your actions to discard just 2 cards from your hand, you get to steal 1 coin from another player. That sounds a bit sort of pathetic. I couldn't do anything else. But in the one game I played, I did consider doing this, at least at one point in time. So the third action, that's the most important one. That is play the card from your hand into your tableau. And there's lots to talk about here regarding playing a card. Something that's very important is, just like your hand, your tableau has a limit. At the beginning of the game, your tableau is limited to 3 cards only. That's also extremely different from Pax Porfiriana, but the way this limit is enforced is different. So cards in your hand, if you already have cards matching or exceeding, you cannot draw more cards. In your tableau, it's different. You can play, if your limit is 3, you can play a 4th card, but at the end of your turn you have to choose 1 card and discard. So before I start to explain what all the icons on the cards mean and what the cards themselves do, I think it's a good point to mention that the layout of the cards themselves is really good. I really like this layout, especially if you compare this to the layout from Pax Porfiriana. You can tell just from looking at these cards that, you know, the cards aren't terrible. If you play the game, you know what's what and what's where, but the same information is not always found in the same space for different types of cards, and it just looks a bit cluttered and confusing, whereas this is a very clean design. And if you're looking for a certain type of information, it will be in the same space for all different types of cards, and that makes it much easier to teach to new players. And I really like the design of these cards. Kudos to Sierra Madre Games, well done. So a couple of things to point out that are common for all cards are these stars, and these represent the rank of the card. The stars could be 1, 2, or 3. So this card is 1 star, that's a rank 2 card, and this would be a rank 3 card. There are 4 different colors for different types. You have these economic cards, political cards, spies or intrigue cards, and then the red military cards. And every card that you put into your tableau is going to have an immediate effect on the board or on your tableau, and you're going to place pieces based on what type of card it is and on the rank. And the pieces could be these cylinders belonging to a certain empire, or they could be your cubes. And there's 4 different types of units And this depends on where your cubes are. If the cubes are in your tableau, these are spies. If the cubes are on a card on the map, they are tribes. If you have military units belonging to an empire on a card, then they are armies. And if you have a cylinder belonging to an empire in between cards, then these are roads. These are the 4 types of units you can have in the game. And every card lets you place a corresponding number. So this is a military card. You put this in your tableau, you get to place 3 armies. This lets you put 2 spies into play. This lets you put 2 tribes into play. And this lets you put 2 roads into play. By comparison, if you had this guy, you would only get 1 spy instead of 2, because his rank is only 1. Okay, so I know how many units I'm going to place, but where on the map am I going to place these units? Well, every card down here has a little mini map, and one area is highlighted, and this is the area that the card is connected to. And in most cases, this means where you place your units. So this guy has Punjab here, and if you play him, you put 3 armies in Punjab. The card here refers to Persia. So if you play him, you would look at Persia, and then you would put 2 tribes into Persia. The spies are placed on the card itself, and the roads are placed on road connections connecting the area that is highlighted. So if I were to play this guy, I would take Herat, and then I could place roads on any of the connections. Pretty clear, I'm only going to place cubes of my own color. That makes perfect sense. But what kind of empire discs am I going to place? I'm going to place the ones that I am loyal to. If I'm loyal to the British, I'm going to put down British soldiers and British roads. If I'm loyal to the Russians, then instead I'm going to put down Russian soldiers. Okay, so now I know how many units I'm going to place and where I'm going to place them, but why do I want to place units? What are they good for? What do they do for me? And every unit has 2 reasons. First of all, it helps the empire that you are loyal to gain supremacy, which helps you win the game if you have the most influence in that empire. And these things can also be useful to you throughout the game. You can use them to your advantage or to harm other players. And for the most part, I want to talk about this later, but a good example to explain now are the tribes. If I have 2 tribes in this area, and now another player wants to play a card that belongs to Persia, even if it's a card that doesn't put any units into Persia or connecting to Persia, like this guy, because he only puts 2 spies on himself, then this player would have to pay me 2 coins because I have 2 tribes in Persia. And as a matter of fact, this is the general rule. If you want to put a card into your hand from the market, remember you put the coins on these cards that come before it in the row. If you want to play a card in your tableau, the cost is depending on the state of the board at the moment. If I want to play this guy, I need to check what's the situation in Persia like, and then I need to pay everybody who has tribes in this area 1 coin per tribe. And again, that's a huge difference between this game and Pax Pamir, because in Pax Pamir you would play the card and then pay the money to the bank, whereas here you pay your fellow players. The money just keeps circulating around. Okay, so I play the card. I get to place some units on the board. They do good things for me. That's awesome. What else? Every card, depending on the type and the rank, has a passive bonus that is in effect as long as the card is in my tableau. So the 2 most important ones are probably the blue and the purple ones, intelligence and the political cards, because they expand my hand limit. Every rank in a light blue card I have gives me +1 hand size. So if this guy were here, my hand size would be 3 instead of 1. And every rank in a purple card increases the size of my tableau by 1. If I had this guy, my tableau size would be 5 instead of 3. The red ranks, the military cards, help me to break ties. Whenever there's a tie between two players, is broken in favor of the player with a higher military. And at first that may or may not sound very impressive, but in this game it's very important because ties are common and they can be very, very important, especially when you have a topple and you check for supremacy. One of the empires has supremacy, but two players have the same amount of influence in that empire, then the player with a higher military wins. Another very important point is, after you've gone through all 4 topples without any empire gaining supremacy, without any player winning, this is considered a tie, and the winner of the game overall is the winner of the most military. In Pax Pamir, this was the player with the most money, and Pax Pamir is the player with the most military. And you can play towards this kind of victory condition. You can try to manipulate the game in such a way that no empire can gain supremacy, and that you try to set yourself up to have the most military at the end of the game. It's like an alternative route to victory. So very important. Probably the least important of these passive bonuses are these yellow stars. There's one of the special actions. I haven't talked about these yet. These are down here. This tax action allows a player to steal money from other players. And every star you have in a yellow card protects one of your coins from taxation. So, alright, I play the card, I put stuff on the board, very good. I have a passive bonus now, awesome. What else? You see these icons in the middle, and first of all, I love the fact that every icon has a word written under it. That is so helpful when teaching this to new players or just for yourself at the beginning of the game. Because you see the crown and you're like, what does that do again? What was crown? And oh, it means tax. Very good. I think more people should do this. The game is still language independent. I can still just look at the symbol, fine. But it helps when you're learning the game so much to know that this actually means a campaign. So remember how I said you have 3 basic actions to choose from, and you get to do 2 per turn. Every one of these little symbols represents a new type of action that you can perform while this card is in your tableau. And these actions could be one of the 2 actions you do per turn. In addition, you're going to have a certain regime in place, and this regime has an effect on gameplay in that whatever is pictured on this regime card is actually a quote-unquote free action. If the regime were political fragmentation, if I had this guy in my tableau, I could use him and this ability would not count toward this limit of 2 actions per turn. However, I can only use a card once per turn. So even if the card has, say, multiple abilities, and even if these abilities would be free to play because of the regime, I could still only use the guy for one of those once. And we found it's quite useful to kind of turn them sideways a little bit so you remember that you've used the card, especially if you're playing for the first game or 2, and later in the game you have this huge or possibly huge tableau, lots of stuff to keep track of. This can be quite helpful. These special abilities, I don't want to go into detail on them, but I will kind of gloss over them later on. I will say, however, that it's important what the rank is of the card. The higher the rank, the more powerful the ability is that you use with this card. Okay, get to put stuff on the map, passive bonus actions, more actions to take. These might be free depending on the regime, that's all great. What about these icons? What do they do? So there's 2 different types of icons. You have just icons like this, crossed sword, or maybe something like this. And these represent one-time bonuses that you get when you play the card. This symbol, leverage, means that you take coins from the bank. So this symbol is the only way in which new money will come into the game. The symbol over here means that you get to place a military unit. This is what this garrison means. Usually when you play a yellow card, you only get to play roads. In this case, you get to put down 2 roads plus 1 military unit. Another important symbol is this one with the arrow, and this means you change the regime. Whenever you play this card, the moment you play it, you change the regime to whatever is pictured here. So this would turn whatever it was before into intelligence war. You play this guy, it becomes economic boom, and so forth. These cards that change the regime can be very important because the regime card itself has an influence on gameplay because of these special actions, but it is also very important to determine which superpower has supremacy. You need to have the right regime in place when you trigger the topple, otherwise you cannot win. So I think the last 2 things to talk about here are what are some of these special powers that the cards give me, these special actions I can take, and how do I win the game? How does one of the empires gain supremacy? And the 2 are linked. So the tax action means that I can take money, I can take 1 coin per star I have on here for from players who either have tribes in this area that this card is connected to, or that are loyal to an empire with a road connecting to this space. It's a bit tricky to wrap your mind around it, but basically it just steals money from players. You can avoid being taxed by other players by staying away from this area, building the roads in different ways, different connections, and not putting people in this place. The red actions have to do with the armies, with the soldiers I put on the board. Say, actually I don't think these regions are connected like this, but you know, for the sake of argument, I have armies here. I'm taking the campaign action. And note that the campaign action could be on a card that's not a military card, that's fine. You check what is the rank of that card, and then when you take the action, you can move any number of units. The amount of armies you move does not have to match the rank. You can move them to a neighboring region if there is a road. This is the main purpose of roads. It allows armies to move around on the map. If you don't have a road there, you need to pay money into the market of the offer and the rightmost position, not from the left. So say I've moved my armies into this region, and there's some enemy armies there, and there's some enemy tribes, and maybe there's even an enemy road connected to this region. I can now start doing damage. And I do 1 damage, again, per rank of the card. So I'm using this card to activate these guys. I would do 3 damage. First, I have to attack the opponent's armies. Say I'm choosing the Russian Empire as my enemy for this attack. The first damage, I would take out 1 army. Every army I destroys one of my own. And then the 2 that are left, I could take out the tribes, or I take out 1 tribe and 1 road. Basically, I can blow up your stuff. The effectiveness of the action is based on the rank of the card, not on the number of armies. Even if you have 2 roads here and 1 guy, even if I only have 1 army, I can do 3 damage because the rank of the card I'm using is 3. If the rank were 1, even if I had a ton of units, I could only do 1 damage. It's always based on the rank of this military action. So The other actions to talk about are the yellow actions. They allow you to either take money, so this commerce action means you can take money from the market without actually taking the card. But you can take money from any card in the market even further down. You can take 1 coin per rank of the card. And the gift card allows you to acquire a gift. Remember, I said at the very beginning you have these spaces, you can put your own tokens there. Every token you have here is 1 influence in the empire that you're loyal to, but they get more costly, 2, 4, and 6 coins as you acquire more. Again, this money is placed on the market starting from the right, not from the left, from where you would usually start to buy these cards. So this leaves us with the spy actions, light blue actions. Before we get into those, there's one last concept which I've forgotten to talk about before, and this is loyalty. You see that these cards have a little colored band at the top, and this is loyalty similar to, say, your starting player loyalty, which might look like this. In my tableau, I can only have 1 color. These cards are called patriots in the game because they have loyalty to a certain empire. So this would be a legal tableau. Neutral, green, and green, I'm good to go. This would be a completely illegal tableau. I can only be loyal to 1 empire. I can only have patriots belonging to 1 empire at a time. If a card enters my tableau that has a loyalty associated with it that does not match my current loyalty, I have to change my loyalty and I have to discard all cards that do not match. This is including my starting influence, and this influence is then lost. You don't get it back. It can still be a good idea to change your loyalty depending on how the game goes, but it's important to keep in mind that if I take this guy and I'm Afghan, then this guy has to go. And this also tells you about the relative value of cards in the market depending on what empires the other players are loyal to. If they are loyal to Russia, then this card may not be so interesting to them, but if another player is loyal to Britain, this card could be very interesting for him. And if you know he's next in turn, then maybe you want to try to get this card at least into your hand so that he can't get it. The cards also have a second band at the bottom. And this card is called a loyalty prize. I'll talk about this in a second. So when it is time to determine who has the most influence in an empire, every point, sort of every card with a colored top counts as 1 point of influence. Though he would have 2 influence in the Afghan Empire. Right now, this would be 3 influence in the Afghan Empire. If you manage to kill one of these cards, yes, you can kill cards, assassinate them from other players' tableaus. I'm not sure how you would assassinate the army of the Indus, but you can. You would gain it as a loyalty prize. It would go under your card as such. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 influence in the Afghan Empire. And again, ties are broken by military strength. So you would check who has the most influence in this. The cards can come into your tableau if you play them. Another way that the cards can enter your tableau, and a way in which you can have influence in your own empire or in other people's empires, other than having cards in your tableau, are spies. So these cards produce spies, and the spies start out on this card in your tableau. You can use the travel action to move the spies. And actually, this is also important. When I add a card to my tableau, I have to make a choice whether to add it to the left or to add it to the right of my tableau. And this matters. I love this. I've not come across this in another Tableau engine building game yet, but the reason it matters is because of these spies. They travel. So if this was my Tableau and this was say another player's Tableau, I want to send these spies over there, I would have to take the travel action. I travel a number of spaces equal to the rank here, so 1, 2. With one action I'd move onto this card. If I wanted to go to this card and have to expend another action, if the cards look like this, then I would have ended up on this card instead. I can go the other way, so if there was only 2 players, it doesn't come into effect so often. But if you have 3, 4, 5 players, you really have to start walking through other players' tableaus to reach the card that you want to get at. Once I have a spy on a card, I can do several things. I can put the spy onto either this band at the top or the band at the bottom. This spy now counts as 1 point of influence for whatever empire he sits on. And because these are considered clandestine sort of actions, I can have influence in an empire I'm not loyal to through spies. I can even have the majority of influence in an empire that I'm not loyal to through the use of spies. You can only do this in another player's tableau. These 2 cards were in my own tableau. If I was loyal to the Russians, I couldn't send my spy to go spy on my own people or like this. But if these were in another player's tableau, I could send them in to spy on their stuff and gain influence this way. And the Patriots are a bit of a double-edged sword in a way, because they can give other players the opportunity to gain influence in your own empire and even to contest or surpass you, certainly if 2 people are loyal to the same empire. Then these spies can have a huge impact. Another thing that these blue cards can do, some of them have the assassinate or bribe action. If I assassinate someone, it costs 2 money, so the symbol just means money, and the card is killed. It's destroyed, discarded, bye-bye. If I bribe the card, I need to pay 2 money per rank, so 4 money in this case. And again, the money I pay here goes onto the market, beginning from the right to fill up. And if I bribe a card, it directly goes into my tableau from your tableau. I'm stealing it, in effect. Counter-espionage lets my spies kill other spies that are on the same card as my spies. This is... it's very confrontational, shall we say. And it feels like you're vulnerable all the time to spies coming in and blowing up your stuff and stealing your stuff. If you are very attached to your tableau, if you want a game where you just keep building and you build something beautiful and you look at it at the end of the game and think, this is amazing, this is what I did, this is probably not the game for you, because your stuff will get destroyed and stolen, and it will make you unhappy. So these light blue cards do. I think I've talked about all the rest. Something else to keep in mind as a very important concept: after you've played a card, you place these units. These units are no longer connected to this card. I can use this card, say if I played him and he gets a spy, I can use this card's ability to move this spy. Same with military. If I have some military units, I can use this ability to move these units, even if they're not in this region, even if these were not placed by this army, it doesn't really matter. In actual fact, I can play this card, gain the army, and then maybe because I went over my 3 cards in the tableau limit, I discard the card, it's gone, but the units stay on the board, and I can make use of them later on. So I think I've covered pretty much all the important rules. Believe it or not, even though it's a long video, I've not covered all of the rules. There's some minor rules here and there that I missed. But the last thing to explain is, how do you actually win the bloody game? And you do this by checking for supremacy. So whenever a topple is triggered, the topple enters the market. Whenever someone picks it up into their hand, it's immediately triggered and it's immediately played, and you check for supremacy. An empire has supremacy if two conditions are fulfilled. The first condition you always have to fulfill is you need to have one of everything. One army on a card, one road, at least in between cards. You need to have one spy belonging to a player that's loyal to this empire, and one tribe belonging to a player that's loyal to this empire. You need to have one of each type of unit. And depending on the regime, say if the regime was intelligence war, you need to have more of the units associated with this regime than all the other empires combined. So in this case, you would need to have more spies than everybody else combined. In this case, you would need to have more military units than everybody else combined. And this is why it's so important to time everything. It's a question of timing, really. You need to kind of dance around the board situation. You need to place yourself so that you have one of everything. And then you need to have more than another empire or all the other empires combined in one of them. And then you need to have the right regime. And then you need to trigger the topple at the right time. And then you need to have the most influence in this empire. And then you can win the game. So, really quick final summary. On your turn, you do two actions. It's either put a card into your hand, put a card into your play, discard a card, or it could be any of the actions that you have on your cards, or depending on the regime, you may do extra actions beyond these two if they fit the regime. So you keep putting cards in your display, growing your display, putting units on the board, and you start to mess with the other players, destroy their stuff, steal their cards, destroy their units on the board, and position yourself so that when the topple comes, you can come out on top. In summary, I would say that I really like the game. I thought it was pretty good. I've not played it enough yet to give like a full detailed review of the game, but I can already say that if you like Pax Porfiriana, you're also going to like Pax Pamir. I'm pretty sure of this. I think this is a great design, and they really made it its own game. It's totally worth owning both of them. They feel very different. I will, however, say that this game is very confrontational. It's very in your face. There's just so many ways that you can harm other players. Not everybody is going to enjoy this. I think this game is more confrontational than Pax Porfiriana, and that was already pretty cutthroat. It really feels like a knife fight in a phone booth sort of affair. I think this is a great game. I think you should give it a shot if you're interested in these sort of games. It's pretty good. And thanks for watching.